Um, this is Margaret Ann Windsor. My real name is Margaret Ann Windsor. The name given me here is when I was kidnapped and brought here in 41, or rather brought to Molson, Alabama, given the name of a twin, both deceased, is Peggy Ann Childers. Childers was a married name. I'm going to continue because I've got prior tapes, especially the one I just made. I'm going to continue with what was used on me, terrorism, torture, to me and my children, Mark and Scott, every day. I'm 74 and a half years old. Everyone has known about my kidnapping. When I say that, I mean the media. I mean when I found out, I went to the media in D.C., all over, to find out I was just blocked. They already knew. So they've known it, probably the news media here in this country, since the day I was kidnapped in 41 and brought here. So the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, um, quite frankly, they're afraid of it. Mind control's used in a bunch in this too. So anyway, and the FBI are the top investigative team. So people do what they're told. It's much easier to try to discredit me. I had somebody say, well, look at you, what they're doing to you. We don't want it done to us if we help you. And they've told me here in Troutville, Roanoke, all over, when I've begged and pleaded, we don't want it to happen to us. We've been told not to help you, and we won't. So I don't lose you here. I'm going to go back to, I wanted to make something clear here. The hospital that Victor Gonzalez interned, before I met him in Huntsville, and I met him at a health spa after I'd called him, and he told me he was a child psychiatrist and couldn't see me. He came to the health spa with his wife and signed her up. So I did meet him there prior to moving to Atlanta in 67, 68. My point is, he had interned at Parkland when John Kennedy was brought in. Had been shot. And the connection to John Kennedy is his father, Joe, who kidnapped me. He was ambassador to Great Britain, and it was taken out my father, King Edward VIII. By the way, he was a great man. They can't try. This is why they'll never tell it. They've made help commit crimes, and they've taken out Saddam Hussein. They've taken out. They're taking out Assad. They have every intention to, and they don't want you to know the truth. Truth would take it all down because they're all a bunch of crooks here. But let me go on with this. My husband was the one that we moved to back to Atlanta, and he was the one that took me to Victor Gonzalez. He had moved from Redstone, NASA, Huntsville, to ahead of me prior and set up at Lenox Tower, Twin Towers. I want you to take note of Twin Towers, the twin. So that's where Gonzalez's office was on the 16th floor. That's where my husband took me. This is where the man raped me using psychiatry, and I now know that he was part of MK Ultra, the feds that programmed and tortured me, along with Hyman Miller and the good Jew doctor psychiatrist from Huntsville. Shock. I've put that on the other tape just now. So my husband turns me over to him, Gonzalez. My husband I later found was CIA. And the whole thing, I was supposed to marry him. It was arranged, really. So Gonzalez, for a span of 7 years, carried out his torture on me. And that had to do with relationships with my children, the things that happened to them. Their father was diagnosed as a psychopath. John was. Lina Dempsey, the woman that killed her twins, and I was put there, and yes, this is all true. You can't make it up. It can be checked out. But who's going to investigate it? Um, the United Nations, controlled by the Americans, and Elizabeth, and the Queen of the Netherlands, or used to be, my relatives. That's cute. They're going to prosecute themselves. United States and Uncle George and Elizabeth, and we're all in cahoots. So that I don't lose it here, where did I go? We're back to Gonzalez, a sick SOB. Was doing what he was told. The whole thing was that during that period of time, because you can't tell it, and it'd take volumes and volumes of books. During that time, there were patterns established, and murders started happening. Um, so I'm going to give you now. I'm going to go ahead and give you some of the murders that happened later throughout the time, and it was meant for me to put them together in the life I lived. I know. Um, so people might need to look up YouTube or Google MK Ultra and Division 5 FBI that's not supposed to exist, and it's the people that let it happen. I mean, the American people. I've told it. I've always had documents, information on me. I went to the media when I had to crawl, and I don't mean I was literally crawling and walking and begging and faxing when I barely had a penny to eat on. So that I don't lose it here, I'm going to give you a list of some people over the years. I started telling it in about 72. Petula Clark had her throat cut, and I remember Gonzalez came in and told me he had been in Miami and a dinner, and they called Petula Clark, and she's British, by the way, over. And a couple of days later, I believe was when her throat was cut. Well, they were using the P and the C as in Peggy Childers, and I didn't know it then, but I'm British. I'm the legitimate monarch. So here are a list, and yes, there's a whole, think of Wayne Williams and the book that was written later, The List, the Black Atlanta murders. The CNN keeps running. But let me say this first of all. David Frost on the QE2, just what, a week ago, not a week ago, had a heart attack before a speech. He was also back during the Nixon and the Watergate tapes, and has to do with what's really on the Watergate tapes that they've hidden. But anyway, with mind control, what they're using is you can program anyone to do anything. You change their behavior. You take away their freedom to think, or it's not they're not the one committing the crime. They don't even know they're going to do it. They have no say-so in it. So you've got Elvis Presley was killed. You've got Wayne Williams. You got Brian Nichols, who was in Atlanta, and where Wayne Williams was in Fulton County Court. But anyway, he came out, and he's a pretty decent guy as far as I know. He came out of court, and somehow he grabbed the sheriff's deputy's gun, and he took out I believe, the judge and a sheriff's deputy, and then a custom officer, and he's in prison. Natalie Wood, why do you think that hers has been open so long? Has to do with, I'll go ahead and say it because this is what was it, Brain, what's the name of the movie? It has to do with, this is the name game, timing, and you tell it and people don't want to hear it. They actually hate me. Like I was told you're like a messenger, and they want to shoot the messenger. So I'm going to get it confused if I don't keep on track here. So Christopher Reeve, who played Superman, he was up here in Charlottesville, and this was June of '95. And Charlottesville is next door to me here in Roanoke, and that, by the way, is where Anastasia was murdered, May the 4th of '84. Now, she's our Nicholas's daughter. Yes, she is. and she's related to me. They all are. Isn't that something? I mean, I'm living over here in hell. I'm the real monarch, and talking about civil rights and having Elizabeth come through here in '07 when the Virginia Tech shootings took place. Right after them, right after them, Virginia paid her to come. And here I'm living up on the Appalachian Trail. I'm starving, begging, made to look like a fool with everybody knowing the truth. So let me go on. Christopher Reeve, you can do this with mind control. You can do anything. The synchronicity in it is unreal. You can also cause deaths to appear of natural cause. You can also heal them. That goes back to the Tesla in the early 30s. And this is what I was telling. So if the media ever told it, look at the advertisements they would use, the hospitals. I worked for Urban Medical in Atlanta, and I did payroll and inventory. And I can tell you what part of what went into a hospital's inventory back then. So you're talking about if you can cure illnesses, and they can create them, that look at what would happen. All the children at the Jude Hospital in Memphis, all of it could be cured. And then somebody said, well, where would we go? Who would we go to cure it? So I'm going to leave that for you all. It's done through mind control, and it's being done now. That's the reason Warren and Rosina Matthews were taken out. In Atlanta, they were pathologists, forensic pathologists, under Larry McDonald's Hospital, Piedmont, and that's the reason they were shot. Billy Jack, a guy named Billy Jack, and a couple of others were programmed to go up and shoot him and his wife, and they died. And I was writing about that, by the way, in the book. But back to this Superman, Christopher Reeves. He was paralyzed, couldn't breathe on his own, and here's where they come in with Dana, wasn't that her name, his wife, who stood beside him? She died of cancer. So this is why, I was led into jobs and putting it together, and it was hell. My life has every minute been hell. But that's what I was telling, and it's all true, and it can be proven. There's lists of names at Redstone Arsenal, like Bonnie Saylor. In '80 when I was working, this is after I'd been filled with antifreeze April the 1st, and brain damaged and trying to keep it together, and work for Fred Simpson, the DA there in Huntsville. So all that can be checked out. That's '80, and that's when John Lennon was shot by Mark David Chapman. Now I've forgotten. I don't have this written down. But, Sailor. She came to where I was living while I worked for the DA, and she said, please go to your boss, because nobody will help me. She said, my husband and his lab were placed under investigation. She said they had top security at the Arsenal, Redstone, and she said they were ready to retire, top secret. And suddenly her husband, she comes home, and he's blown his head off with a rifle, and he's in the bathtub. The other one drove his car into the Tennessee River and drowned. The other one suddenly had a rare cancer and died. Okay, so that's just an example of a whole list. Now then, Dana, Christopher Reeve's wife, died of cancer. The Virginia Tech shootings, I'm going to skip because there's lists over the years that happened. A lot of people you'd like to, it's like the FBI told me in '82. They don't care. They're bored with what you're telling them. It's only when they find out how it affects them that they care. Tech shootings here at Virginia Tech, Aurora, Colorado, the Grand Theater 16, James Holmes, then the Sandy Hook, and they all blame it on mental illness. Somehow they get back to mental illness and taking out your guns, like in, oh gosh, it's not funny. It's so hideous you can't live if you don't try to. Hinckley. Back to Hinckley when he shot Reagan. And George Bush was CIA director either before, but he was vice president then, and they were friends of the Hinckleys. And that's when the press secretary was shot, and this big push, Brady, was pushed to take out the rifles and everything. So the New World Order gets in to place, and that's what's going on now. Elizabeth and some of my family that sold out when they took out my father, and that means William and Kate that you love so much, that you see all over the press. Anyway, they joined forces with the United States. The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds were kin to Elizabeth's mother. Um, so I'm going to lose it. I'm going to, okay, the James Holmes shootings. And I want to say this, and maybe I'm leaving a lot out, but right now I'm in a lot of pain myself, and that's what I did want to get to before I close out again. When I came here in October of '86, um, I lived on the Appalachian Trail, and I now know that was meant for me to be. I was told by Carl Smith when I lived at Warren House and worked for the DA in '80 that he had come over 5 years ahead of me at Warren House Apartments. And by the way, Warren House, or Warren, is like the Warren Commission. It connects in patterns to the Kennedy and all that, and the cover-up. He said that he's FBI, and they had sent him over 5 years ahead of where I ended up in the apartment at Warren House above him. And I have been told by other policemen that it's laid out, my footsteps are laid out like 8, 10 years ahead of time. And if they try to help me, then their office, the police office, will be put under investigation, and the FBI will find something and prosecute them. And I've seen it done right here in Vinton. I'm not sure that these people would have helped me anyway, other cops. They're afraid of it, and quite frankly, even now, a lot of them wouldn't know what you're talking about, really, or they really wouldn't want to hear it. So anyway, I'm going to list this one, Lovell's garage and gas station, Exxon. It was on Lee Highway, Troutville, where the Appalachian Trail, where I lived, and froze and starved in front of everybody, them trying to get rid of me. He said to me, I went in starving, he gave me some coffee and a donut, and his wife was actually the one that was there. The only time I ever saw his wife. She said, what's happening to you, people around here all know about it. They just don't wish to become involved by helping you because they're afraid it'll happen to them. So I wanted to say how that I've been moved around. The only thing that was wrong with me, it was a diagnosis murder, just like Dick Van Dyke's program. It was used to torture a monarch, discredit, suffering that, and my kids suffered with it. The drugs, the shock, the way of life, everything they did. I found out after coming here, and remember, I had worked for doctors. Not one of them told me. Nobody did. It was almost like, well, you're going to be a nutcase, and that's what you're going to be. Maybe you're not, but it's going to stick. So I found out that I am allergic to chemicals, and that goes back, I understand, to your memory affects that, and some things that when I was kidnapped and brought over here, I wish the world could see that too. But anyway, it triggers that memory or something of the things that happened to me. And I'm allergic to chemicals. And they have deliberately been placed everywhere I lived when I was able to get money, beg it. I couldn't get jobs anymore. Finally get an apartment, give them a deposit, and suddenly I'm drowned in chemicals. And then if you try to say anything, the very people are the FBI and the law enforcement, state and sheriff. They control it. They can get some. Everybody has something to hide. It's back to that. So everywhere I have gone, they have run me with chemicals. When I've leased Section 8 housing at Edinburgh, as in Edinburgh, Scotland. They're using names associated with the monarch. Me. I couldn't believe it. I went in there and you talk about gassing me. You'd have to see what it does to me, to my body. It makes my immune system attack itself, and every organ in my body goes, and the very medicine that they give you can destroy your body, your kidneys. I stayed there, and Clater, the woman's name's Clater, that's very prominent here. She's over Section 8 HUD, so they got her participation in this. I then went to Richville, which was a very nice place. Same thing happened to me. Some shootings, mind control shootings, and deaths happened there. It scares the bejesus out of them, and I'm gone. I had to leave to live. I was soaked in chemicals. Everybody watching it. So this has been the pattern where I would go, finally, my tents, I would go back to the mountain. They'd run me back up there. Well, Eric Smith and the Rangers under Bob Goodlatte, who is now over the Judicial Committee up there, he was over the Agriculture and Food Stamp Program then, and the Forest Rangers, like Eric, are law enforcement. So they would run me back. They would handcuff me and haul me into court. The papers would write lies, and yes, they did, and half-truths. But, it's been a hell of a life with every law being broken. And if I try to tell it, why people will turn their back on you. They don't want to hear it. Let me say this. A maintenance guy, a plumber, if you're living where housekeeping comes in, with me, I would tell them not to use any harsh detergents or sprays or chemicals. You talk about, or industrial, because they get deathly ill. They're talking about Assad, for example. It wasn't okay every day of my life to force feed, because they'd come in and soak it. Yes, they have. I would pass out. I'd go to bed at night and pass out. They'd soak my linen if I dared go out for a walk or go to the store. They fixed the air conditioning and heating so it blew it out. You'd get so sick you'd pass out. And yes, I do have documents on stuff I always have had. Nobody's going to touch it. All you have to do now is look at me. My kidneys and everything are going. And I'm going to say again, this was a Virginia State Trooper. I stayed at Affordable Inn here, which you can lease, and they're relatively nice, but not for me. They weren't nice if you saw what was going on. It's owned by a Jew. He owns a whole bunch of them here. Carl Barton was a retired Virginia State Trooper here, and his wife, Linda, took me in '09 in August, paid the security deposit with their credit card, and I paid everything else for 17 months. I went through the chemicals and the falling down, and everybody's watching this. They're afraid of it. And I'm just an interloper, is what I'm told by them. So the hell with me. They're a clan. They're Americans. They stick together. They raised the rent on me was the reason I left then. But chemicals, the damage done to me over the years, and then Joseph's Way is another retirement owned by a black minister, Reverend Moore, out of Washington, North Carolina. He owns a slew of these. Well, that's federal funded, part of it. So there you go. And you should see what they did to me there. Now then, when I try to apply for low-rent housing or anything, my credit's no good, even though I never missed a payment on my rent. But the very fact that I've moved and had to break leases, you don't see any of that. It doesn't show it up on a credit. And how dare me interview with someone and try to tell them, even when they know it, because it's common knowledge around here. They'll just start asking me, well, why would someone do that to you? And I don't dare start in. I know what's coming. You don't tell them why. You don't tell them your real name. You don't. It's something you can't imagine. And right at the moment, I am the arthritic because it attacks my immune system, and it's like a hell on earth, and there's nowhere to go with it. When I finally got um, an attorney here, suddenly he just lost my files. His words were that he'd lost contact with me. When I had called him and tried to, on his answering machine and everything, and then when I called back, and this is typical, the receptionist says, well, it doesn't show that on the file. You talk about cover-ups, they're all a bunch of cowards. If it's ever told, I hope you can stand to see, and I hope they show what's been done to me.